G'day battlers, and today we're going to be talking about the brand new version of the Sunshine Cup coming to the Go Battle League from October 8th through October 15th, and it is going to be alongside the Ultra League, so for us Great League enjoyers, this is definitely where we're going to want to put our focus this week. Now, I say new version of the Sunshine Cup because it is very different with the max out meta. There are some brand new picks that, because of all of the move changes, have suddenly become quite good in this cup, and we will talk about all of it in a sec, but first off, what is the Sunshine Cup? Well, Sunshine Cup is a cup with 4 allowed typings. That is normal, fire, grass, and ground, with one little ban on Charizard. Charizard is not allowed to hang in the Sunshine Cup, I guess because it would be a little bit too OP, but at the same time, there's actually a different flying fire type that is still going to be rank 1 on PvPoke. You can probably guess what it is. Think a little bit. You can get it. But with that said, let's just jump straight into the meta, take a look at what is going on, and of course, we have to get a screenshot for the thumbnail, so boo! Now, we have 5 main groups on the graphic over here, and then we also have some other picks that are sort of still important in this cup, and we'll talk about them towards the end of the video. Now, let's start with the sort of main PvPoke rank 1. You probably guessed it, it is Talonflame, hanging out right dead in the center of the graphic. Now, there is also a minimized Pidgeot that is sort of squished in right next to it. Pidgeot is essentially just a worse Talonflame in my opinion in this meta. It's still runnable, but it's got a straight flying moveset, and Talonflame just feels a little bit better to me. But it's there, so, you know, just so you know. But the other 4 groups that are sort of around the graphic, we'll sort of just name them as we go. Actually, let's just name them now. So at the very top, we have the traditional ground types. We have Sludge Bomb Clodsire with Earthquake, and then we have Diggersby, who also acts as quite a good Clodsire counter, especially when it is running that Sludge Bomb. Now, if we sort of follow the circle around, we then have the rollout users on the right-hand side, the Licky Licky and the Dunsparce, who you can imagine do a lot of damage to Talonflame, being double super effective. If we then sort of follow around to the bottom, we have the grass types in Jumpluff, Abomasnow, and Tropius, and then the last group over on the left-hand side is going to be the Mud Boys, the Quagsire, and the Swampert. So let's just talk about Talonflame first. It makes the most sense. And look, Talonflame, it does 2 things really well. Number 1, it demolishes the grass types, which is just to be expected. I mean, you've got fire damage from Incinerate, you have flying damage from a double flying moveset with Fly and Brave Bird. You could run Flame Charge, but to be honest, I really feel like the Fly Brave Bird moveset is probably the superior one. It definitely seems to be performing the best at the moment. And yeah, I think the spamminess of Fly comboed with the hard damage of Brave Bird really pairs quite well in this particular meta. You're also able to beat the ground types in the Clodsire and the Diggersby. You're just sort of able to out damage them. And because this Clodsire doesn't have Stone Edge, we are sort of talking about the Sludge Bomb Clodsire here. It just isn't able to play to the level that Talonflame is. Now, Talonflame is obviously going to lose to the rollout users as we suggested. The double super effective rock damage is intense. And then you're also losing to the Mud Boys because they have that ability to get that water type damage onto you. Swampert getting to Hydro Cannons still relatively fast even after the nerf, and then Quagsire also having access to that Aqua Tail, and you've also got access to Stone Edge, which could really ruin a Talonflame's day if you land it with no shields remaining. So that's sort of Talonflame in a nutshell. Pidgeot is quite similar. It is actually able to get a win against Shadow Quagsire, but like on PvPoke in the 1 shield, it's like a 503 rating, so it's very like, you know, 1 mudshot will change it sort of scenario. So look, again, I sort of stand by Talonflame generally being a bit of a better pick in this meta. Now let's talk about the sort of Mud Boys at the top. The ground types at the top, the Clodsire and the Diggersby. Let me know if you think Clodsire is a Mud Boy. I know that debate is sometimes still raging on, but look, they're essentially, obviously they lose to Talonflame. They're going to lose to the Mud Boys as well because they just can't keep up that pace. And then they're also generally going to beat the Licky Licky and the Dunsparce. Licky Licky is a bit better for both of them. Dunsparce can go a little bit back, especially if you're the Clodsire. If you are interested in sort of a 70-minute video sort of diving into the PvPoke sims of Clodsire and Dunsparce, and also for Alligator, check out that video up there. I'll also link it at the very end of the video, but essentially we just did a little bit of a PvPoke deep dive to really understand where the win cons are, because the Clodsire Dunsparce one can definitely get a little bit messy depending on who uses shields, where you have to shield bait, etc, etc. So recommend checking that one out if you do want to sort of get into that nitty gritty and really sort of improve, especially that matchup, because I think it's going to be a very popular one in the Sunshine Cup in particular. But yeah, Licky Licky, a little bit more straightforward. Now you notice there is no arrow between the ground types at the top and the grass types. Essentially Diggersby loses to them all. Like, even though it has Fire Punch, which you would think would be like, oh, you know, you've got some playback against the grasses, They just outspeed you. They just demolish you. Diggersby cannot win those matchups. Clodsire, though, it does still lose to Abomasnow and Shadow Abomasnow, but you are able to get wins against the Jumpluff and against the Tropius, especially because you have that Sludge Bomb. And, Clodsire with a little bit of energy, you're able to overcome that Abomasnow matchup as well. So keep that in mind. I guess you've got play, to be honest. It's a relatively back and forth matchup. You can sort of win those, which is why I haven't put an arrow between those groups. But let's move along the circle and talk about the rollout users. Pretty straightforward for the most part. Obviously, we talked about the ground type matchup. We talked about the Talonflame matchup, also being able to beat Pidgeot. They're also able to beat the grass types for the most part. Two of them have the flying type and one of them has the ice type. All three of those are weak to rock, so it sort of makes a little bit of sense that there is going to be some level of scenario in there, I suppose. There is one little caveat, and that is regular Jumpluff, so non-Shadow Jumpluff, is able to sort of get the one shield against Licky Licky. So Licky Licky is probably like the less preferred one, even though it has access to Shadow Ball, which is a very powerful move. I feel like Rollout Dunsparce is really your main rollout user. Plus, you don't have to sort of build a new Pokemon if you don't already have Licky Licky built. Dunsparce is much more useful in the open Great League. So think about that, I suppose, if you don't have one built already. Now, again, we have no arrow between the rollout users and the Mud Boys. Dunsparce is just going to lose to them both. It just isn't really able to play. Licky Licky does actually have a win con against Quagsire, so you can get that one, although generally you are going to lose to the Swampert. But in saying that, I feel like Quagsire is the sort of preferred mud boy in this meta, so you might not actually see that many Swamperts, so maybe a Licky Licky is actually going to be okay. But yeah, just something to keep in mind that is the case. Now, if you then sort of go around to the grass types, it's all pretty straightforward from here. Grass loses to fire, also losing to the rock types, except for that one little case where regular Jumpluff beats Licky Licky, and then grass types, you're going to beat the mud boys. It's just going to happen. And then we talked about the relationship with the grounds, and then mud boys, we've sort of talked about every matchup. You beat the mud boys, you beat Talonflame, you lose to the grasses, and you generally have a good time against the rollout users as well. And most of these matchups line up for Pidgeot as well, except Pidgeot being able to get a very, very, very tight win against Shadow Quagsire. And then let's talk about the other picks. So the other picks, Stone Edge Clodsire is definitely a very viable Pokemon because you have that better matchup into Talonflame. You land one Stone Edge and you are cheering. If Talonflame is on every team, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't, you are really going to see a Stone Edge Clodsire, I think, picking up. You do have worse matchups against the grasses, but the Talonflame matchup is sort of hard to beat. Now, actually, you lose to Chestnut and Superior, and those are the only matchups you lose in the one shield, so you actually still retain win cons against the other grasses, like the main three we have on this graphic, but it is going to be a little bit worse for you, and the lack of spam might hurt you in some matchups, but something to keep in mind that Stone Edge Clodsire could actually be the play, and it will flip that Talonflame matchup in your favor. We also have Marowak here as just sort of a mud slap user. Generally, Shadow Kanto Marowak is the play. You just get a hard win into the ground types, but it's a little bit, I don't know. You've got some play into Talonflame as well because you do have rock type charge attack damage, so something to keep in mind, something else to maybe consider. Look at the PV Poke Sims if you're interested. We also have Flygon, who has the dragon typing, just being that, having that ability to do neutral damage across the board. Nothing in this meta is resisting that dragon type damage, and you also have that, you at least don't take as much damage from the grass, from the water, from the fire that you would otherwise. And then we also have Staravia, who in my opinion is just a worse Pidgeot, who is a worse Talonflame. So if you really want to run Staravia, or if there are some sorts of ABB scenarios that are sort of playing out, then maybe you could look to Staravia. Or maybe if you dive just a little bit deeper, Staravia actually has some really sick matchups. And if that's the case, let me know that I'm an absolute goober, but to be honest, I feel like Staravia is a little bit overhyped on the PV Poke rankings. But in the grand scheme of things, that is the Sunshine Cup meta. Again, don't forget to subscribe for the next two Meta Simplified infographics for I think it's the Little Halloween Cup and then the Great League Halloween Cup that are next two off the block. And of course, thank you to my YouTube members and patrons for being lovely human beings as well. But with that, I will see you in the next one, which is probably going to be another episode of that PV Poke sort of simulation training where we're going to look at a couple more Pokemon, couple more matchups. So subscribe and stay tuned for that.